Hello again, everybody. Coming to you again from a hotel in Indianapolis, Indiana, from the SEEK 2019 conference. What I wanted to talk about in this video is actually watching the debate again, and not even sure how I stumbled across it. But at one point, Chris Cuomo, I think he's an MSNBC host, I think, CNN, I don't know. Anyway, but this is back in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election when Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, was still in the mix. And he was debating on Chris Cuomo's show about abortion. And Senator Rubio was making the case that, listen, life begins at conception. And Chris Cuomo was like, well, wait a second, that's not been established. We don't know when life begins. You can't just say that. You're just asserting that. And Senator Rubio did a fine job, and he made some good analogies. But that's a topic I've wanted to record on for a while. So I wanted to just maybe clean up a couple things I think Senator Rubio missed and simplified a bit. When I was teaching philosophy and ethics, this actually came up in class quite a bit, especially in the ethics class. And so I want to just kind of give you a basic treatment of how I presented that. Because really, before abortion becomes a political question or a moral question, or certainly a religious question, it actually begins as a scientific question. There are deep philosophical and moral questions, ethical questions that follow on it, but it really begins with science. And the question that has to be answered when you're talking about the issue of abortion is really, what is the unborn? And that's a science question before it's anything else. So here's the deal. The whole question, we don't know when life begins. And of course, the infamous Barack Obama interview where he was asked that, and he gave the ridiculous, cowardly, dodgy, that's above my pay grade, and then just ignored it. Here's the facts, scientifically. At the moment of conception, sperm meets egg, forms zygote. At that moment, that new entity formed from the union of the sperm and egg satisfies every one of the requirements that science, not religion, not philosophy, not politics, science puts forward as being proper to life. What do I mean by that? Science has to classify things. And one of the major classifications, one of the major divisions in things which exist and with which science has to deal is the division between living and non-living things. Well, how do you know if a thing is living or not if you're a scientist? Well, it's simple. You observe living things and non-living things, and you see if you can come up with a list of characteristics that all living things have and which no non-living things have. And as it turns out, there's a whole list of those kind of characteristics. All living things have them, no non-living things don't. Among those characteristics are things like organic growth, meaning the thing develops organically, need of nourishment, ability to reproduce, the metabolizing of nutrients, right? So those are all items on the list that all living things have, characteristics all living things have, and no non-living things have. So we can ask the life question right at the moment of conception. Is this thing, sperm and egg, is this zygote, the kind of thing which satisfies the test for life? Does it have those characteristics? And as a matter of fact, it does. From the instant sperm meets egg, it is organically growing, it's reproducing itself at the cellular level, it's metabolizing nutrients, and it needs nourishment or it will die, which means cease to do all those other things I just mentioned. And so it's a living thing by a scientific definition. That is a life from the moment of conception. Okay, so it's a life, but what about human? Well, there again, science just steps in to answer that question. All humans have human DNA in common. And so we just check the DNA because we can. Does it have human DNA? It does, which shouldn't surprise us because it has human parents. And like begets like. Humans beget humans. Cats beget cats, dogs beget dogs, parrots beget parrots, goldfish beget goldfish, rhododendrons beget rhododendrons. Like begets like. So it has human parents, it has human DNA, it's human. So that's just science. We haven't done a bit of philosophy, we haven't done a bit of religion, we haven't done a bit of ethics or politics. Science says at the moment of conception, has human parents, human DNA, it's growing organically, it's reproducing at the cellular level, it's metabolizing nutrients, it needs nourishment. It's life, and it's a human life. But is it the mother's life, right? It's the mother's body. It's easy to test too. We're still just doing science. Mother's body has its own unique DNA, as does the father's, so we can test the DNA of the zygote as it begins developing. Is that mom's DNA? No, it's not. Is it dad's DNA? No, it's not. It's its own unique genetic fingerprint, has its own unique DNA. So we now have a unique human life at the moment of conception. Hashtag just science. Once we've established that, though, we have to ask some significant follow-up questions. So this makes the abortion question very simple. It doesn't make it very easy, but it clarifies the abortion question. What we are now asking, ethically, morally, politically, is under what circumstances, if any, would it be morally permissible to end this unique human life? It's very small, it's very early in its development, but it's developing. And by the way, that's what every human being, yourself and myself included, looked like at that stage of development. That's what human beings are supposed to look like. If we had a window into the womb at the zygote stage, then the 4-cell, then the 8-cell, and the 16-cell, and the 32-cell, etc., we wouldn't expect a dude to be hanging out there in the womb looking at his wristwatch, brushing his goatee. That's what we all look like at that stage. That's what a human being looks like when it's at the developmental stage. Okay, so under what circumstances, if any, would it be permissible morally to terminate the life of that unique individual human life? Now, of course, as a Catholic, the answer is under no circumstances. There are no circumstances that could reduce that new human life to the level of subhuman, non-human, or non-living, and thereby violate its right to life. It has the right to life because it's a fundamental human right, it says in the U.S. Constitution. And so here's what happens, though. At this point in the debate, a lot of folks who support the right to legalized abortion, a lot of folks on the pro-choice side, will say, well, listen, it may be, okay, fine, maybe it's technically a human being, right? Fine, science, what? Okay, that's fine. I'm willing to go that far with you. So technically, it's a human being, but it's not a human person. So it doesn't have human rights. It's not a human person. It's a potential human person. It could get there, given time. If the mother decides to keep the pregnancy, it could become a human person, but it's not a human person. Technically a human being, not yet a human person. So here's the problem with that, though. And this is a pretty profound philosophical and ethical challenge to the position. If you want to say that it's possible that there are technical human beings who are not human persons and therefore do not enjoy full human rights, beginning with the right to life, you've put yourself in company that you probably don't want to be in. Because the fact of the matter is that move, that dodge, has been tried over and over and over again throughout human history. Technically, human beings, not human persons. And whenever that move is used, look out. Somebody is about to get violated. Give an example. The slave trade, right? So listen, technically, Native Africans are human beings. We get it. But they're not human persons like us white European folk. Therefore, they don't have full human rights. We can raid their villages, kidnap them, yank them away from their families, throw them on slave ships, and then use them for free labor in the colonies. Or how about this one? Technically, Jews are human beings, but they're not full human persons like us German Aryans. So it's okay if we round them up into ghettos in the cities of Europe and then put them on trains, ship them to concentration camps, work and starve them to death. We're trying to eliminate them anyway, because those human beings, not human persons, need to be eliminated for the good of the persons in Europe. This is the one that I think is the most interesting, and that I would pose as a question for a pro-choice woman to consider. What about this? Technically, women are human beings, but they're not full human persons like us dudes, like us guys, like us men, right? So they don't have the right to vote, or they can't decide who they want to marry, or they're not allowed to pursue higher education, or we don't pay them the same work, same pay for the same work. This is the problem with the idea that you can take a group of technical human beings and demote them from personhood in order to take away their rights. It's been tried before. There be dragons. That is a monster breeding ethic. And so if you can see how it's wrong in the case of African slaves or the Jews in the World War II or women throughout history, you ought to be able to see that the same test applies to the unborn. They're human beings. Human beings equals human rights. And it starts with just science. A caveat here at the end of this little video. As a Catholic, obviously I realize that there are a lot of women and a lot of men out there who are post-abortive. They've already had abortions. And many of them are living with the struggle, with the pain of that memory and that sense of loss. And so as a Catholic, I just want to say to you, and I mean this with all my heart, Jesus loves you. He knows what happened. He was there. He knows the circumstances that went behind it. There's no explaining needed. He loves you, and he wants to offer you his mercy. As Catholics, we're very blessed to have the sacrament of confession, where we can take those kind of things to the sacrament, meet Christ in the confessional, and allow him to heal it and give us a new start. If you're Catholic or you were Catholic, you've been away, come back. Go to confession. Allow the mercy of Christ to unite you again to himself and to allow him to begin his healing work in you. And I would recommend Rachel's Vineyard, Catholic or not, which is a retreat for post-abortive parents. So I just want to say that if you're someone for whom abortion is part of your story, don't despair or think that you're somehow worthless or unforgivable. That's not at all the case. Jesus loves you. He died for you just like he did for Mother Teresa. So come back to Christ, embrace that mercy, allow him to begin the healing. For the rest of you, it's just science. If it's a human being, it has human rights, and it means we ought to respect and protect those rights. All right, remember, the church has what the world needs, so learn your faith, live your faith, and share your faith.